Untitled Records. Welcome to the shed, Kai.
Thank you very much for having me.
No worries. Kai and I have been friends for a little while now, so I've got to see the evolution of Untitled Records. So Kai, tell us a little bit about how you went from modelling to starting a career in music.
Well, I'm still modelling.
Okay.
And for me, I think it was when I was about 23 and I kind of thought, what am I actually doing with my life?
Yeah.
Modelling's not exactly a long-term profession, and obviously it's solely based on your looks. So if anything were to happen, then kind of screwed. So my brother went to BIM, he did music production, and he's 3 years younger than me, but I kind of started looking, my dad started putting BIM stuff in front of me, and I started thinking about like a professional music career. Started making music with Taran, and then kind of wanted to be involved in one way or another, and I thought potentially shaping someone's career could be quite a fun thing to get involved in.
It was your parents that kind of instilled your love for music, or do you think you found it on your own?
I'd say so, yeah. I have memories of like dancing on my grand's toes and stuff to like ballerina type, ballet type music and stuff, classical music, all that sort of shit. So I'd say, yeah, and then going on like long road trips with my parents and stuff, listening to Dr. Dre and that sort of stuff. So yeah.
So really were surrounded by a vast range of genres.
Yeah,
then.
definitely.
And do you think whilst you were travelling with your modelling, it kind of allowed you to experience more cultures in terms of music?
Yeah, for sure.
More heritage behind musical instruments and sounds from different areas of the world.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I'd say, I mean, I'm not a big fan of K-pop, but I know in Korea it's massive, and that is like a very different type of music. They consume it like it's food, like they live and breathe K-pop. So it's definitely interesting seeing how music kind of affects different cultures. Yeah, for sure.
Kind of go into the label now. What do you think drove you to wanting to start a record label?
I'd say mainly to like kind of self-release, but kind of, I don't know, like for me I'd like to shape an artist's career who's much more talented than me and kind of give them the tools to succeed in a very competitive landscape, which I feel like if I've learned a little bit on the music business side, it gives me like a better arsenal to do that properly.
Do you think because you have learned more about the music business side of things now, do you think that has helped develop you as an artist?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like, even things like putting the bio in your Spotify and little things like that, which you wouldn't learn if you didn't, see the sort of business side of it, which are really, really simple things, but little things like that obviously separate you from the 10,000 songs that are being uploaded every single day to Spotify. So I feel like any sort of edge, even if it's small, gives you an advantage. So I'd say it's definitely helped, yeah.
Considering how much music is now flooding streaming platforms, how do you think, as an artist or as the front person of a label, how do you think artists can kind of give themselves that competitive edge to make them stand out?
I'd say probably by educating themselves a little bit on sort of
the business side of things.
Yeah, I think it's important. I feel like obviously now, because music is so accessible and it's more accessible than it ever has been, and it will only get more and more accessible as time goes by. I feel like having any kind of edge, like watching videos on what separates you from other artists, is a bonus, and it will definitely make you stand out a little bit more than everyone else who's just trying to do the same thing. And promoting your music properly, like, because I think before I started the label, I just released a couple singles with no promotion, and of course they don't get any streams and no one listens to them, because why would they? But if you promote it a little bit, even with a small following, people will start to listen more, and it just increases traffic.
Untitled Records, what kind of led you to choosing that name?
I would say kind of not trying to be tied to a title, hence the Untitled. Kind of like
Clever.
all, yeah,
Clever.
I know. Kind of like all kind of like rap, hip hop, grime, anything like that, and then potentially, because I'd say that's where kind of mine and my brother's specialty, like in terms of music and knowledge, boils down to. But then hopefully in the future, like a little bit more funk and classic maybe and stuff like that, like represent a broader range.
You don't really want to limit yourself to one area or
No,
one genre. You
no.
do kind of want to leave it open.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really exciting.
Completely.
But right now, you're working with Brighton-based artists.
For now,
For
yeah.
now, but you are interested in expanding.
Yeah, 100%.
Do you think there's anything that makes you guys unique and gives you that edge, especially as an independent artist and
Yeah.
label?
I'd say we're probably still figuring that out, but I would say kind of the inclusivity and community is something that we're quite, we hold pretty strong to our hearts and our morals.
Do you give those listening at home any advice on how to manage their time and trying to deal with lots of projects whilst also trying to have a job? So I think that's a big thing that we don't always show in the industry, is that we work part-time jobs as well to make this all possible.
I'd say like to-do lists. I mean, sounds corny, but like Gantt charts.
Yeah.
Literally just like,
Gosh, a Gantt chart.
yeah, just like laying it out properly so that you know what you're doing each day, and you kind of have like objectives, let's say, like daily objectives, weekly objectives.
Advice would you give to somebody who's wanting to start their own label?
I would say kind of lay out your brand values, like what you're bringing to the table that's a little bit different, what you stand for, what genre you're looking to go into, who you're going into it with, like look at your skill sets, what can you do that maybe your partner can't, and vice versa. Because I think if you're both going into it with similar skill sets, you're going to struggle to kind of make it authentic in a way, because you kind of overlap each other a little bit. For example, my brother and I are very, very different people. He's much more kind of technical, patient, can do all the video editing and all that sort of stuff. I don't have a Scooby about any of that. I would say my strengths are more like conversing with people, networking, project management, that sort of stuff.
But some would say probably quite a perfect match then.
Yeah.
It's a yin and a yang.
Exactly. Yeah, I'd say it's important to have different skill sets with whoever you're going into it with, I would say.
And would you advise somebody to go into it with somebody else, or do you think they could manage it on their own?
I'd say it's a lot of work if you're doing it by yourself.
Yeah.
You can do it. I mean, if you've got a lot of time, or you're financially stable and you can afford to kind of invest all your time and effort into it, then you probably can do it. But it's draining as well. Artists are pretty slack and they're not the best at replying, so it's intense and it does drain you. But I'd say you could, but if you have a very close friend or someone else that shares that passion, I'd say it's probably nicer
to be going into it.
Yeah, it's a journey you can have together.
I know that streaming has become the main source of consuming music these days. How do you feel that the low royalty rates that Spotify are notoriously known for, how do you think that affects artists trying to emerge, trying to be financially stable?
I mean, it's difficult. Like, they've put that cap, isn't it? I think it's under 1,000 listeners, you don't get paid anything. So, I mean, some would argue that's a good thing, because it means you get rid of the people that aren't really doing it seriously and, kind of just crowding the market. But I think it definitely needs to be restructured and looked at, because I think eventually it will get to a point when no one can afford to be creative. And I think it's not just music, I think it's many other industries as well.
Deezer has recently proposed a more user-centric royalty model.
Yes.
Do you think that this is something that major platforms will ever adopt? And if so, do you think it will help indie artists?
It will definitely help indie artists, 100%. Because the current model doesn't support or make it viable for them to kind of go into that market at all. Because I think even if, for example, you listen to someone really niche, you're not actually giving them your money, you're giving the big artists in that pool all of it. Yeah. So I feel like, well, obviously who are those big artists signed to? The majors. So I don't think it will change for a while, if I'm real. I think it will take a while. It'll probably take a lot of public pressure and industry pressure for that to happen, but it could.
It's definitely something that I think they're starting to maybe feel.
Yeah.
Something that I think has come up in the industry a lot more recently.
Yeah.
But then maybe it is just about time that artists do start getting paid fairly for their actual work.
No, 100%. I feel like we're all guilty of it. I use Spotify. A lot of us do for convenience. But I think the more people that kind of say, all right, actually, fuck Spotify.
Yeah.
I'm going to use something that actually pays artists better. And if I listen to someone that isn't that big, my money is actually going towards them, because it might only be, $10 or £10 or whatever extra a month for them, but if 100 people do that, it accumulates and it adds up.
And it helps.
So, yeah, I think if people start kind of the more awareness brought to it, the better. Because I
Yeah.
think if you're just an average consumer, you don't think about that sort of stuff. Like, why would you?
No.
You know what I mean? You just assume the payment system is fair.
Treated in their contracts with major labels. How do you want to ensure you support your artists?
So I would probably look to instill like a deal in favour of the artist, which I know with independents it's 50-50 quite commonly, but I'd be happy to give 60% to the artist and take 40, just so they feel like they are the priority
Yeah.
and they don't feel mugged off in any way, shape or form. Kind of educate them as well, like that's something as a label that I'm quite up for doing. Like, I kind of wish I had this, again, I'm going to relate it to modelling, but I wish when I started I was educated on the industry I was stepping into,
Yeah.
because I made a lot of decisions and mistakes that, you know, going back in time I would have changed and done differently, but I'm sure that's the same for a lot of people in a lot of professions, but especially in an industry where everyone kind of tells you what you want to hear and kind of gives you that false hope and sells you those dreams, for example. So I would quite like to kind of set up educational like classes, like sit down with, because realistically I'll start with one artist, maybe two
Kind
after.
of coaching them. Like, do you think AI generated music has become more advanced, and what do you think your view on it is?
I mean, it's definitely becoming more advanced. I'd say every day it's becoming more advanced. It's a little bit terrifying, but it's also the Wild West in terms of copyright. Sorry, copyright. And I don't know, like it's difficult to navigate because obviously different countries have completely different laws on it.
Yeah,
And I
which is
think
difficult, especially for artists that are trying to
Completely.
reach into different audiences in
Yeah.
different areas of the world.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like the whole Drake Kendrick beef, like for me, Tupac is like an idol of mine. Like he's
Yeah.
one of the people I looked up to.
And to be dragged into something that's
Yeah,
quite petty.
obviously he's dead, so he has no say in it at all, and his voice has just been completely used for, you know,
And actually was used. It was taken and
Yeah.
used.
Yeah.
for
through AI.
something.
And Drake wrote it, obviously, slating Kendrick and stuff. And I feel like, I don't know, that's just a little bit mad to me. It's not really respecting the greats.
Do you think it kind of goes against their human rights in a way? They didn't have a voice to say that they couldn't use it. It's not like
mean-
they were still alive and they stole it. He actually isn't here anymore. and
That's
they
what I
took
mean.
it.
I think the Tupac estate's probably. I'm not sure if they're trying to sue. I'm not entirely sure what happened with that, but yeah, no, it's definitely disrespectful. I think any rapper that's passed and you're trying to use, you know, an AI version of their voice, I just don't think that's something you can
No,
really.
justified.
No, I just don't think it
I
is.
don't think any beef, as you call it,
Yeah.
is.
No
It's
beef's
worth
worth
that.
it. No.
You do put
Yes.
on events as part of the label.
Yes.
Could you give us some more insight on those nights and why you started doing them?
Brand awareness, just sort of getting the name out there, networking, meeting new people. Like since putting on the events, I've literally spoken to so many more artists, so it just opens up doors for like potential collaborations and like working with different people, putting them on songs, that sort of thing.
Do you
like
think it's
features.
allowed you to better understand the current music scene and what scene you're wanting to tap into?
In Brighton, definitely, yeah,
Yeah.
because like some of them are relatively like well established in Brighton, like in the hip hop scene, like loads of people kind of know them in the local area, so it's definitely given me more of like an insight as to what works, what doesn't. Also, some of them are like super consistent, so it's refreshing in a way, and you got to respect the hustle.
Yeah, and how do you think that these events are going to help branch out Untitled Records?
I'd say just kind of like maybe getting people into hip hop a little bit more, like coming to sort of high energy events and stuff with the crowd being engaged and that sort of thing. Like we want to, for each event we're doing, like film behind the scenes sort of stuff and show the crowd really getting involved and like kind of look like a community feel, getting all the artists to come down like at the start of the event so they're all supporting each other, and kind of creating that like community / network.
A very engaging experience. as
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
Yeah, and do you think that these events are something that you'd like to expand on, or maybe just something that you're kind of looking at the moment?
I mean, at the moment I'd say, yeah, it's just good for getting the brand name out there, but definitely in the future expanding for sure. Like for the Great Escape, we want to put like a little busking stand with like an Untitled banner in the background and stuff. Sort of get some artists down, encourage them down. Someone important might walk by, it might be an opportunity for them. yeah, definitely expanding at some point with it. It's also fun, like
It
events.
sounds like a really good idea.
Yeah, events are fun to put on. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Get to meet new people, which is,
Exactly.
I think, is great when you're in this position,
Yeah,
100%. Artist-wise, industry professionals, or even just grassroots venue owners. Like, it's always nice to know who you're working with around the Brighton scene.
Yeah, 100%.
I am coming to my final questions for you now. Sorry. What do you think will be the biggest change in music in the next 5 years?
We've touched on it earlier, but yeah, I'd definitely say AI. It's kind of like the biggest wave of uncertainty that's probably going to hit the industry, if I'm real. Also potentially seeing like a shift from majors to more indies. Yeah, I think that might be a thing that's starting to come to fruition.
I think our generation is fighting for these things more than maybe in previous years.
Like even like Taylor Swift's fans, for example, like literally they won't listen to her old album anymore because obviously her old label still own the rights to it, so they still get paid, etc. So yeah, I think there'll be a
There's
few
change.
shifts. Yeah, 100%.
Untitled Records in 5 years.
Kind of like setting a precedent, hopefully, for the rest of the industry, like kind of showing that educating artists and making sure they're clued up on the decisions they're making is a beneficial thing for the entire industry, not just for, just not for themselves, not trying to squeeze every little bit of money you can from them.
Yeah,
and
take advantage, really.
Yeah, literally, and give them fair deals, show them how it's done properly, so that you don't get things where labels own more of the music than the artist does, and they don't want to release any more music because they can't. There's legal disputes. Just kind of allowing art to be art.
Yeah, I think that's a great approach, especially as you are an indie label and it is what you are standing for.
Yeah, exactly.
So my final question for you now is, who or what are you listening to at the moment?
In terms of emerging artists, I'd say Rab Stilo, CP Company, I think his name. The name of the song is, sorry. Banger, like really good hook, good energy, proper London sound. And then in terms of just like general artists, like my usual kind of artists like Kendrick and Don Toliver and stuff like that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And a thing that I'd like to do with the shed is kind of, at the very end of it, let you guys ask me one question.
Yes.
So what is something that you would quite like to ask me?
I would like to know why you've decided to make the Shed podcast and what you're hoping to kind of bring to people.
I think the shed for me is really important because I've kind of developed this passion for working with artists and creative minds, and I've always enjoyed being able to have conversations with people about change and about the future, and I really would like the shed to bring that to the industry and kind of support emerging talent in any way possible, whether it's through jobs, whether it's through studio sessions, whether it's through connecting people. Like, I just would like to give as much back to the industry as I can, whilst also trying to build a platform of community of people who care about music and change and bringing positive change to the industry.
Amen.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you very much, Kai Perry, for being on the shed.
Thank you so much for welcoming me.
And may I actually mention
beautiful
our
shed.
first ever interviewee on the shed.
Fuck yeah.
Smashed it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
Woo!
And thank you to Lauren.